a deeper understanding of a case for police and judicial reforms in India. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on a very crucial subject which affects the lives of almost every citizen of the country, police particularly, and of course also judiciary. Now, why do we need police reforms? Well, that is the first question that comes to anybody's mind when we broach the subject. See, please, you will have to go into the history of it. I'll take you back to 1861. No, I would rather take you back further to 1857. Yeah, as you all know, there was a rebellion in this country at that time, and there was an attempt to overthrow the British and establish a free India at that time. The foundations of British rule were quite shaken by the revolt of 1857, and of course they were able to crush the revolt and establish their supremacy. But it set them thinking. They felt that they need a police force which should be all India in character, and which should be at their beck and call all the time, and it should carry out their orders, right or wrong, lawful or unlawful, but the executive directions must be carried out. Now, it is in this background that the Act of 1861 was framed, which still, by and large, governs the functioning of the police. It placed the police completely under the thumb of the executive, and there was no discretion to sort of question any direction or any instructions. I won't blame the British for it, because they had come here to rule the country. They were ruling the country. They were an imperial power, so they wanted such an arrangement whereby the executive is paramount and its authority over the police or any other apparatus was unquestioned. Now, this act has unfortunately been a millstone around our neck. At the time of independence, it was felt that probably we'll have a new police act, a new philosophy for the police, a new working arrangement, whereby it would become not a ruler's police, but a people's police. But unfortunately, that did not happen. I won't blame our early leaders also for that, because they thought that now that we are an independent country, the police, which was so far serving the colonial masters, would serve the people of India now, and they could depend fully on its loyalty and on its service delivery. Their optimism and their faith in the police was not misplaced. The police lived up to their expectations for about 2 decades. But gradually, some kind of what the National Police Commission described as a symbiotic relationship developed between the rulers and the police, and it became some kind of a give and take. And this was exposed in a most horrendous manner during the emergency in 1975, when excesses were committed by the police. A whole lot of people were booked and put behind bars, not because they had committed any offense, but just because they belonged to the opposition. Now, the excesses committed during the emergency were exposed by the Shah Commission. And now that led to the formation of a National Police Commission in India, because it was felt that the police had overstepped its limits, and it was being misused by the executive. And as Shah Commission said in its report, in its concluding report, they said that if a recurrence of this kind of tragedy is to be avoided, the police must be insulated from all kinds of external pressures. This was their finding. So the Shah Commission was appointed, but by the time the Shah Commission was appointed by the time the National Police Commission was appointed and it gave its report, Mrs. Gandhi was back in power. So the recommendations of the National Police Commission were not seriously considered. I have some slides. If we can run through the slides. Can you show the next slide? Yes. Now this gives briefly a profile of the Indian police. Just to give you an idea of what we are talking about, the total strength of the state police forces is 2.63 million, of the central armed police forces is 1.10 million. And we have about, you can say about more than 25,000 police stations and outposts. Police per 100,000 or per lakh of population, the sanction is 193, but on the ground are actually 152 only. And it is generally said that there should be about 220 or so per thousand of population, per lakh of population. So we are much below the optimum. The population which a policeman has to serve is 555 after that number of public, you have one policeman, and policeman per 100 square kilometer is 80. Women police strength is about 10.49% of the total. But let me assure you that this number is escalating very fast, and the women recruitment is taking place at a very rapid pace. Next. There was an excellent status of policing report brought out by the Common Cause and some other NGOs. It was not a government report. It has a very high credibility. So I have noted down in 10 points the summary of that entire report. It says that the police in India works at 77% of its sanctioned strength, and that police personnel work for 14 hours a day on an average. 14 hours a day, mind you, without any break, no holidays, no Sundays. And 3 out of 4 police personnel reported that workload is affecting their physical and mental health. There's bound to happen when you have no break and no holidays. 1 out of every 10 police station has no drinking water or toilet facility. Now we are aspiring to a superpower, but even drinking water facility is not there at police stations, at some police stations. Then premature transfer of officers of the rank of SP and DIG has gone down from 37% in 2007 to 13% in 2016, following the judgment in Prakash Singh case. That was the PIL filed by me. Now, pressure from politicians is the biggest hindrance in crime investigation. It has been there in the past, and it continues to be so in the present. Women police more likely to be engaged in in-house tasks, but this is gradually changing. They are getting, there have been women who have risen to the rank of Director General of Police, and they are being given field appointments. Now, the last 2 points are rather controversial. 1 out of 5 policemen feel that killing dangerous criminals is better than legal trial. Now, it is difficult to subscribe with this view, but yes, that is the fact, and that was brought out by the status of policing report. And then 4 out of 5 policemen believe that there is nothing wrong in police beating criminals to extract confessions. This again is a highly controversial observation, but anyway, we'll proceed with this, and during Q&A, we'll deal with it. Next. Now, why this is the point I was discussing, that we have a colonial structure. You see, it is the Act of 1861, which still governs the functioning of the police, and there were and as I said, no changes were carried out after independence, and emergency exposed the brutal character of the police. We need reforms for a progressive modern police. And what we have been agitating for is that we should have what we like to call a people's police instead of what we have today, a ruler's police. Next. Now, this is a quote I have given just to give you an idea of how time has stood still for the police. Mind you, this quote is from a report written by Police Commission in 1902-03. But when you read it, and if I were not to tell you the year when this was written, you would probably say that this would have been written, say, about maybe 4 or 5 years back, because it is as relevant today as it was, say, more than 120 years back. I mean, it seems as if time has stood still for the police. You can read it. The police force is far from efficient. It is defective in training and organization. It is inadequately supervised. It is generally regarded as corrupt and oppressive, and it has utterly failed to secure the confidence and cordial cooperation of the people. The police force throughout the country is in a most unsatisfactory condition, that abuses are common everywhere, that this involves great injury to the people and discredit to the government, and that radical reforms are urgently necessary. So mind you, as far back as 1902, the commission talked of the need of radical reforms. And in 2023, we are still not talking, but you can say struggling to get police reforms directions of the Supreme Court implemented on the ground. So it's a very ironic, I would say, and it's a sad reflection on our leadership that time has stood still for the police, and that reforms which I talked of about 120 years back, those continue to be on the anvil even today. Next. Now, at the state level, different commissions were appointed. I mean, in Kerala, West Bengal, Bihar, Punjab, Madhya Pradesh, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Assam, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, they all had their state police commissions. And while these commissions recommendations were broadly followed up by compliance by the state governments, but one recommendation which was made by almost all the state police commissions, that was ignored by every state government. And that was to give police some kind of functional autonomy or functional, I won't use the word independence, but some kind of functional autonomy, so that in the day-to-day functioning, there's no interference by politicians. This is a common thread which runs through all the state police commission reports. But on this point, none of the state governments agreed, and they carried out whatever other recommendations were made, which were acceptable to them, which were mostly, I would say, cosmetic, like increasing house rent allowance and things like that. Next. A National Police Commission, I have already talked about it. This was appointed because it was felt that there was no comprehensive review at the national level of the police system after independence, despite radical changes in the political, social, and economic changes in the country. Its chairman was Sri Dharamveera, who was governor of West Bengal, a former ICS officer. They produced an excellent report in 8 volumes, which we look upon as the magnum opus of the police. Next. Now, apart from at the national level, I mean, I've told you about the state level commissions. At the national level also, there have been so many commissions. There was National Police Commission I have just talked about, which gave its final report in 1981. There was a Ribeiro Committee on Police Reforms in 1998. There was a Padman Vaiya Committee on Police Reforms in 2000. A group of ministers were appointed to make recommendations on national security. They also talked about police reforms. Then there was the Malamat Committee on reforms in the criminal justice system, which the report dealt at great length on police reforms. Then there was Soli Sorabji Committee on Model Police Act in 2006. There was a Professor Madhav Menon Committee report on draft national policy of criminal justice. And then we had the second Administrative Reforms Commission in 2006. Now, all these commissions made salutary recommendations about the police, but the one recommendation which is very vital and which is very essential for the day-to-day functioning of the police is insulating it from outside pressures in the day-to-day functioning. Next. Now, the Supreme Court, very briefly, after retirement, I retired in 1994, and then I felt that there was something drastically wrong with the functioning of the police, because during my own career, I had several very, very unfortunate experiences, which were traumatic, I would say, and I'm using a very mild word, very, very traumatic experiences I had in the course of my career, while I was trying to enforce the rule of law, while I was acting conscientiously, and yet they would disgrace me and humiliate me. So this set me thinking that there's something wrong with the police, and something basic needs to be done. Cosmetic improvements have been taking place year after year, but something basic needs to be done. So at that stage, I studied all the reports published during the last, you can say, 40, 50 years, and I produced a public interest litigation. That PIL was filed in the Supreme Court in 1996, and it had a 10-year gestation period. For 10 years, we struggled in the Supreme Court, but ultimately a historic judgment came in 2006. The judgment, this is what the judgment tried to achieve. They recommended an arrangement to insulate police from political pressures. They gave internal autonomy to police in personnel matters. They ensured better accountability on the part of police in the course of its functioning by constituting accountability commissions at the central and the state levels. Then the selection of DGP was more objective, so that it did not depend on the whims and fancies and the political predilections of the chief minister in power. Then all the field officers were given assured secure tenure of 2 years, and the investigative and the law and order functions were directed to be separated. These were broadly the objectives behind the 5 directions of the Supreme Court. Next. They also recommend now about the State Security Commission. I won't go into the details of it because this would take a long time. For the State Security Commission, how it was to be composed, there were 3 models recommended by the National Human Rights Commission. One, Ribeiro Committee recommended another model, Sorabji Committee recommended a third model. But all these models were broadly, they had some common features in the sense that they were headed by the state chief minister. They would include the chief secretary, they would include the home secretary, they would include the DGP, they would include a member from the judiciary, they would include members from civil society. So, but only the numbers were different. Somebody said 2 members from civil society, somebody said 3 members from civil society, etc., etc. But these 3 bodies recommended the setting up the whatever their recommendations were about the setting up of State Security Commission, its composition. They had certain common features. Next. The functions were laid down that they would only lay down the broad policies and give directions for the performance of preventive tasks and service-oriented functions of the police. They will only give directions. They will now about how these tasks are to be carried out, and they would evaluate the performance of the state police, which would be that evaluation report would be placed before the state legislature. Next. Then there was to be a police establishment board, which would comprise the Director General of Police and 4 other senior officers of the department. And they will, broadly speaking, they will have enough autonomy in personnel matters in deciding the postings and transfers of officers up to the rank of Deputy SP. They will have full autonomy. And as regards senior officers of the rank of SP and above, it was mandated that they will give recommendations to the state government, and the state government would give due weightage to those recommendations. And if they disagreed with those recommendations, they would record their reasons and then change those orders. Next. I talked about accountability. The state, the Supreme Court mandated the formation of 2 complaints authorities, one at the state level and the other at the district level. In the case of state level, it would be headed by a retired judge of the High Court or Supreme Court, and at the district level, it would be headed by a retired judge of the Sessions Court. And they would be assisted by members selected from a panel prepared by the State Human Rights Commission and Lok Ayukta, and they would inquire into complaints of serious misconduct against the serious misconduct. The state level authority would against serious misconduct by any officer of the rank of SP and above, and the district level authority by any from the rank of constable up to the rank of deputy SP. Next. I've done this. Next. Then the selection of DGP. Hitherto, it was entirely dependent on the chief minister of the state, but we found that the chief ministers were appointing directors general of police, and not on the basis of merit, not on the basis of their capacity to deliver services, but because the man belongs to their region, their caste, or he is personally loyal to the chief minister. And so loyal that if the chief minister says दिन को रात कहेगा तो वो भी कहेगा हाँ जी sir अभी तो रात है, that kind of thing. So chief ministers were appointing DGPs about whose loyalty they were 100% sure that this man would not disobey me, and he would carry out all orders given by me, right or wrong. We said no, this arrangement has to go. While we could not take away the prerogative of the chief minister in appointing a DGP, but we said that a procedure would be prescribed whereby the service record of the officers who have been impaneled for elevation to the rank of Director General Police, though their service records would be sent to the UPSC. They will prepare a list of 3 most suitable officers after going through the service records, and then those 3 names would be sent to the chief minister. So, and the chief minister would be obliged to select one of the 3. The idea was that, look, if say out of 100, say one is getting 90, another is getting 80, a third is getting 75, even if the man who is 75% is appointed as DGP, he would still be good enough for good enough as DGP, and he should provide good leadership. But the problem was if somebody say in the range of 50% or 40% was appointed, as was happening so far with the chief ministers, because as I said, they wanted people of guaranteed loyalty. So this was a new procedure prescribed for the appointment of Director General of Police, and it was laid down that he would have a 2-year term irrespective of the date of superannuation. Next. And it was said that not only the DGP, but all the other field officers like Inspector General in charge zone, DIG in charge range, SP in charge district, and SHO, they will all have 2-year tenures. Next. But 2-year tenure did not mean that it becomes your zamindari and that you could go berserk and you could do whatever you like and you become capricious, you start collecting money, you start doing all kinds of wrong things, and yet you will continue. It was laid down that he could be removed after disciplinary proceedings or after conviction in a criminal case or a case of corruption, or if he's found incapacitated from discharging his responsibilities. Next. Then you see, they laid down that in the bigger towns and urban areas, which have a population of more than 1 million, the investigative work and the law and order work would be separated. Now, this was felt necessary because what was noticed was that whenever there was a serious law and order problem, like a major crime happening in the district, or say some VIP visit happening, so the Prime Minister is coming or the Chief Minister is coming, then the prime anxiety, the supreme anxiety of the Superintendent of Police is to just see the day through, let the VIP visit pass through peacefully, and in the process he would draw all his entire staff, irrespective of the work he was doing, including the investigators. We said, no, this is wrong, because such crises were happening far too frequently and the men were getting sucked into law and order functions every now and then. So we said, no, for investigative work, there has to be a separate staff, and they would not be drawn into any law and order duties without a specific sanction from higher authorities. Normally, they would be doing their investigative work without any interference. So it was said that this would be introduced in bigger towns with the population of more than 10 lakhs. Next. Then at the central level, they said there should be a National Security Commission, which would be headed by the Union Home Minister and will have some experts, and Home Secretary as the ex officio secretary. Next. These were the 7 recommendations, 6 related to the states and 1 related to the center. Yes, go ahead, please. Next. Yeah, you can move on. Next. Now, what has been the response of the states? It is some states have done partial compliance, and some states have passed acts, and some states have passed executive orders. Now, a number of acts, about 17 states have passed police acts, different police acts. Normally, one would have expected that these police acts follow the directions of the Supreme Court, and they would follow the guidelines or the directions laid down by the Supreme Court. But the story on the ground is very different. You see, the Supreme Court judgment, which came in 2006, contained a caveat. It said that these orders will hold good till such time as the center or the states pass their own acts in the matter. Now, the states saw in this particular proviso an escape clause. They said, all right, we'll pass an act, and then we are beyond the purview of the Supreme Court supervision and the Supreme Court monitoring. I repeat that the orders were to hold good till such time as the state passed their own acts. The state said, all right, we are passing these acts. Now, as I said, the acts should have been in compliance with the Supreme Court directions. But what the states did was that they passed acts legitimizing the status quo. Whatever arrangement was existing, that was given a legal cover, and they said, all right, now we are beyond the purview of the Supreme Court monitoring. Now, the first state to do this was Bihar, and it was followed by several other states. So far, 17 states have passed, but as has been examined by several agencies, including the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, my Common Cause, and by me personally, none of the acts are as per the directions of the Supreme Court, and whether the acts or the executive orders, they are against the letter and the spirit of Supreme Court's directions. And whatever compliance they claim to have done is all farcical. It is on paper, and this was found by the Yes, go ahead. Next. These are the states next which have passed acts. Next. Government of India's response has also been very tardy. Next. Now, the Thomas Committee was constituted in 2008 as the act was progressing and as we were hammering at the Supreme Court that, look, the states are not complying. They said, all right, we'll appoint a commission headed by Justice K.T. Thomas to go into the compliance by the Supreme Court. Its members included an IAS officer and an IPS officer, and they gave their report in 2010. Next. Now, this Thomas Committee said that no state has fully complied with the directives in letter and spirit, and there is these are the words used by them: total indifference to the issue of reforms exhibited by the states. Next. Now, in 2012, there was a Justice Verma committee. The background of that committee was altogether different. That was appointed in the wake of a Nirbhaya incident and to suggest amendments in the criminal law. But they have devoted one full chapter to police reforms, and they very clearly said that we believe that if the Supreme Court directions in Prakash Singh are implemented, there will be a crucial modernization of the police to be service-oriented for the citizenry in a manner which is efficient, scientific, and consistent with human dignity. Next. Now, the latest position is that states which have passed executive orders have diluted the directions of the Supreme Court, and the 17 states, they have violated in letter and the spirit of court's directions, and Government of India has also been half-hearted in implementing the court's directions. Next. Now, the Supreme Court directions are relevant, important to uphold the rule of law in this country, to insulate police from extraneous pressures, to protect human rights and improving governance. A lot of people think that these directions are there for the glory of the police. No, they are not for the glory of the police. They are just to improve the enforcement of laws and just to ensure that the rule of law is upheld under all circumstances, and there is no day-to-day interference by politicians in the functioning of the police. Next. Now, when we talk of police reforms, please remember that while the Supreme Court directions constitute the core of police reforms, there are several other related matters which are also very relevant. Now, what is the manpower? I should be using the word human resource because there are a whole lot of women also in the police today. The total police per lakh of population, as I said at the very beginning, is 193.95. That is sanction. That is what the sanction is, but the actual boots on the ground is of 152.51 only. State police sanction strength is 2.63 million, but the actual is 2.06 million, and there is a vacancy of more than 5.7 lakh people in the ranks. Next, these need to be filled up if the police are to perform their functions properly, as it is a shortage of manpower. I mean, please remember that we are not only overworked, we are under-resourced, we are understaffed also. Transport is inadequate. Communications, you'll be surprised. We claim to be an IT power, but there are 143 police stations which have neither mobile nor wireless connectivity on date. Forensic laboratories, I mean, the numbers may sound impressive, but they're hopelessly inadequate in terms of forensic support. I believe Mr. Amit Shah has made whatever he has said recently gives us hope that there'll be many more forensic laboratories in the near future. But at least for the present, let me tell you that at any given point of time, there are 2 to 3 lakh exhibits lying unattended and unexamined in different forensic laboratories across the country. Housing satisfaction, this is only in respect of the non-gazetted staff. The report, the National Police Commission had recommended that the housing satisfaction should be at the level of 100%, but it's only 31.24% today. Next. There are a whole lot of other points. I won't be able to go into the details of it. Working hours, I've told you, it's 14 hours a day is too much. Training is very inadequate. And training institutions show a state of neglect, and the worst officers are dumped in training institutions. In Army, I mean, it's a matter of prestige to be going to a training institution, but in police, it's considered some kind of a punishment. Then police workload has to be reduced. It's a little too much, and the Administrative Reforms Commission, headed by Virappa Moile, they have recommended certain core areas where the police functions could be decentralized and delegated to other formations. Registration of cases is a huge problem. I mean, we could discuss this during Q&A. Modernization of police is the modernization grants are released, but they are either not adequate and even when they are adequate, they are not fully utilized. There is a lot of several problems in modernization of police forces. Commissionerate system we should have in all places which have a population of more than 10 lakh. In the south, in South India, there has been by and large compliance of this, but in the north there is a lot of resistance to the introduction of a commissionerate system. Then it's also, I have always felt that the police should be brought in the concurrent list because, I mean, the states, the feudal, I mean, most of the chief ministers, I'm sorry to say, display a very feudal mindset. Not that center's thinking is absolutely impartial or very clear on the subject, but even then, I think center uh, fares better, performs better than what we are witnessing in the states. Some of the states think that they look upon the police as some kind of a force which is at their beck and call just to fix the people and to carry out their all kinds of orders, right or wrong. Next. No, police reforms are very urgent and very necessary because I think it is essential for the survival of democracy. So I say it is essential for the survival of democracy because, I mean, if as present you find a whole lot of people getting elected to assemblies and parliament. According to a recent report of the ADR, about 25% of the people in the parliament have serious criminal cases, charges against them, and 40% have criminal cases against them. Now imagine an assembly, a parliament, where 40% of the people have criminal cases against them. Now, we would like to see them behind bars, but how do you expect us to put them behind bars? You expect us to salute them. That's the problem. I mean, we don't have, I mean, we dare not touch an MLA or MP in the normal course of our functioning. Then sustaining the momentum of economic progress. Here also it's very important. We are very proud of our economic progress, but economic progress can take place only when there is good law and order. I have always felt that if we had better law and order, probably the pace of economic progress would have been much faster. Then for combating terrorism, for combating insurgency, organized crimes, and I mean, we need a more professional police than we have today. And the objective should be to transform rulers' police to people's police. Next. That will be a new beginning. Now, we can stop the slide. Now coming to judicial reforms. Judicial reforms, you see, the biggest problem with our judiciary is the huge pendency of cases. In the district and subordinate courts, as on date, there are about 4.4 crore cases pending. In the high courts, there are 60.6 lakh cases pending. In the Supreme Court, there are 69,766 cases pending. The total works out to more than 5 crore. Mind you, before the pandemic, it was we were talking of about 4 crore pendency, but it has since gone up to 5 crore. There are a number of problems why this pendency continues to grow. There's no time limit for disposal of cases. Adjournments are sought on the most frivolous grounds, and then there are huge vacancies in the courts. It is estimated that about 5,000 judicial officers in lower courts, their posts are lying vacant. There are 330 posts of judges in different high courts across the country, which are lying vacant. Another problem is vacations. There was a very good article sometime back by Vivek Debroy in the Times of India, Vacation Pe Vacation. You have heard of Tarikh Pe Tarikh. There was an article called Vacation for Vacation. And there he quoted from the Malimat Committee report. It's worth reading. None of the government organizations in the country, I quote from the Malimat Committee report, none of the government organizations in the country have vacations except in the courts and educational institutions. Educational institutions where the children are educated to stand all together on a different footing. In this context, it is necessary to know that in most of the countries in the world, the courts do not have any vacations. The judges from the courts in France and USA who interacted with the committee told us that their courts have no vacations. And the judges can take leave according to their convenience without affecting the smooth functioning of the courts. And the Malimat Committee said that the vacation of courts is a legacy of the colonial rulers. I think we should do away with this. And there was a parliamentary committee also, which was recently appointed in its 133rd report. They have also said the judges could go on vacation whenever they need it. Just as government officers are sanctioned that you can have 14 days casual leave and so many 30 days earned leave. Likewise, they could also be said that, all right, whenever you want leave, you can go. But it is not that the entire institution comes to a grinding halt with just one or two or a few judges attending to cases during the vacations. So this is a very serious problem. Government of India appointed a national mission for justice delivery and legal reforms in 2011. Much was expected from it, but unfortunately not much has happened. I have a number of, what needs to be done to improve judicial, delivery of, improved deliveries in the judiciary. The suggestions I have: number one, fill up the vacancies. I mean, here also, as in police, as I said, there are more than 500,000 vacancies. Here also, the vacancies need to be filled up. In fact, I would go to the extent of saying that you review the strength, whether the strength, the sanction strength is adequate, or you need more judges. I mean, the one yardstick which is given is that there should be 50 judges per million. Whether we have enough judges according to this yardstick. If not, increase the sanction and have more judges. Then, as I have said, judges should be asked to go on leave as and when they need it, and the number of days which they can avail on leave, that should be prescribed. They should go on by rotation, and there should be no shutting down of the Supreme Court during summer vacation and during Christmas. And there's so many holidays. I mean, judges take holidays comparable to school children. I'm sure they don't want to be equated with school children. Then there should be a time limit for the disposal of cases. And if you cannot have time limit for the disposal of cases, at least have time limit for arguments. I mean, I have been going to the Supreme Court ever since my case was admitted in 1996. And I have enough experience of seeing how Supreme Courts function. I was really disappointed. Some of the advocates, they almost dominate the court proceedings, and the judges are scared of cutting them short. And if they decide to speak for 1 hour or 2 hours, the judges somehow, I don't know why, they don't have the courage to tell them that, no, you are given 15 minutes, you're given 20 minutes, or you're given half an hour, and you have to conclude your arguments. You can't go on ad infinitum. I mean, you can't go on filibustering, as they say. There should be a time limit for arguments, and then promotion of judges. I mean, it is for consideration. It should be linked to their performance. How have you performed during the, say, last 1 year? I mean, that should be reviewed every year. Another useful suggestion is that there should be greater use of technology in the judiciary. There could be a computer algorithm to decide on the listing of cases, on the allocation of cases, which bench you should go to. Presently, there's a lot of manipulation which takes place. People get their cases listed early. People get their cases listed before particular benches. All that manipulation goes on behind the benches. Nobody knows how it happens. I don't know how it happens, but it does happen. And it is, I mean, there's a lot of, you can say, golmaal in the way the cases are listed and the way the cases are allocated. Then e-filing of cases in courts, that we should go ahead with it. And virtual hearing, I mean, this is something we had learned during the pandemic. Why can't a whole lot of cases could be held virtually also? There's also a suggestion that we should have an all India judicial service. This suggestion has been given quite often, and I don't see why there's so much delay in it. On PILs, you see, I find that a whole lot of frivolous PILs, when PILs were have been a very useful instrument to seek justice on public interest matters. But I now find that PILs have become, there's so many, I mean, on every conceivable issue, there's somebody or the other going to the Supreme Court with a PIL. I think we need to set right this trend, and the Supreme Court should take a more stringent view, and they should impose fines on frivolous PILs. I find they're very little too large-hearted in admitting these PILs, and there are some advocates who have specialized. I mean, there are some advocates who boast, "Oh, हमारा तो 100 PIL है Supreme Court में." Is this something to be proud of? I mean, you're just wasting everybody's time, and you're wasting the judiciary's time. You're wasting, I mean, in the process, there are so many litigants who are deprived of justice in the Supreme Court. Then it is also for consideration if the Supreme Court, if we could have branches of the Supreme Court in, say, why should a man from Chennai have to come all the way to fight his case to Delhi in Delhi? Why should a man from, say, Mizoram have to travel all the way to Delhi to fight his case in the Supreme Court? I mean, it's a large country with a huge population, and I think we can have uh, branches of the Supreme Court in Mumbai, in Calcutta, in Chennai or Hyderabad, and one in Delhi or Chandigarh, wherever it is decided. And the Constitution Bench and the Supreme Court unit in Delhi, they should limit themselves to constitutional cases, and other matters should be dealt with in the specific zones only. I think the Supreme Court could consider this aspect also. I mean, these are some of the suggestions I have for improving the judicial delivery system. I think I have taken 40 minutes that was given to me, and another 20 minutes for Q&A, whatever questions you may be having.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. I would like to request our chair, Professor Mukul, sir, to please give his views.
Namaste, Mr. Prakash Singh.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. This was one of the most fascinating and informative presentation on the importance of police and judicial reforms that I have heard. I think this is a agenda that does need to be taken up if we are to achieve our ambitions for the Amrit Kaal. So thank you very much, and I do hope that your suggestions do get considered by the policymakers in a much more earnest and urgent way. I'm sure there are a lot of questions that the participants have, so why don't we turn to them?
Thank you so much, sir. We do have a couple of questions coming in. First up, we have Rahul Yadavji. Would you like to unmute and ask your question? Rahulji, would you like to unmute and ask your question? Sir, I'll ask on his. Okay, is he there?
We can. Okay, Rahulji might be experiencing some issues. We can go to next.
Okay, next, yes.
Amritaji, those who can ask quickly. Saurabhji, Amritaji. Yeah.
May I go
hello.
ahead?
Sorry.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, Amritaji, please go ahead.
Yeah. Sir, thank you for that very informative session. I had two questions for you. One, do you think the police should undergo training for better public interaction, like gender sensitization? And the second one was, what reforms do you propose for prisons in India?
Training, I say, training is a dark area for the police, and training requires complete revamping. I mentioned that at the very beginning, that training is a dark area because the worst officers are posted to training institutions. They consider it a punishment, and they just while away their time. And if you examine the infrastructure available at the training institution, that also is very antiquated, out of date. And people generally, you come across a group of people in training institutions who are demotivated, who have no commitment to the society or the police or the country. They think they have been punished and they have to just spend the few years that they have to. So training has to improve, and of course gender sensitization that you refer to, that's a very sensitive area, and that they need to be made more gender sensitive. And with the greater induction of women in the police force, as I said, they have crossed 10%, and the number is increasing at a very fast pace. The graph is going up at a very fast pace, and I think within a few years, 5 to 7 years, we should be reaching the 33%, which has been prescribed for representation of women in the police. induction is having a very salutary effect on the general attitude of policemen towards women. It is having a sobering effect, and but even then, I would say gender sensitization is a must, particularly in as far as the recruits from those areas are concerned, where there is a very patriarchal environment in society. It's a very vital thing. Then you said what reforms are needed in the prison. Now that was beyond the scope of our my presentation, but since you have raised the point, see that is another very dark area. And in prisons, the biggest problem is overpopulation of the prisons. They're overflowing with prisoners, and if you examine these prisoners, you find that about 75 to 76% prisoners are under trials. Now, why why somebody under trial should stay? It should be the prisons are meant mostly for people who are convicted by courts. But here the under trials have to spend long hours, and sometimes they have spent more than half the term which they would have been sentenced to if they got the maximum sentence. So, I mean, this is a very serious area, and it's because of the delay in judicial delivery, they continue to be in prisons. So the problem of under trials, then the problem of VIP prisoners, that also is very serious. VIP prisoners and the problem of mafia dons staying in prisons and managing to run their mafia even from within the jails. Their murders take place within jails. So I mean, within the jails, all is not well within the jails. And apart from the fact of overcrowding, how is it that the jail administration either it is won over, or it is bought over, or it is browbeaten by the mafia don? Something happens, and then everything goes wrong. With the mafia don sitting inside the prison and yet dictating that this man should be killed, or this is how you have to operate in future. This man is to be targeted. So all is not well with the prisons, and there have been several committees. The Supreme Court has also made some suggestions, but I do not know why things are moving very slow. At one stage, some prison officers came to me and they said, "Sirs, like police, you move a PIL on prison reforms also." I asked them for a lot of information, which they never gave, and they never turned up again. So that's how the matter rests.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Next, I would request Saurabh ji, can you please unmute and ask your question?
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Sir, I had a question in terms of, sir, in your vast experience, sir, are there any, positive laws or guidelines in which you've seen in your experience different states collaborating for a positive impact? Because India is such a diverse country with so many with states, each state having its own laws. Are there some laws which mandate states police to work together to have a positive impact? And if you can cite an example in your experience.
Look, it is laid down in CRPC that when a police from different state comes in giving a hot chase or pursuing a particular criminal, the state where the criminal is hiding or is sheltering, that state police should give necessary cooperation. All those legal provisions are there, but much more than legal provision, what was helping the police was the feeling of camaraderie. You see, when the mere fact that you are an IPS officer, and when you ring up another IPS officer, I mean, if not 100%, at least 95% of the cases, the telephonic communication or an official request concerning a particular crime or criminal is taken very seriously. It is a kind of a bhaichara which has kept things going, and there has never been any problem of coordination or collaboration in taking action against criminals who are crossing state boundaries. But now something different is happening. You see, with some states where there are opposition parties and these opposition governments being at loggerheads with the center, I mean, they are taking an entirely different stand. And we have had so many confrontations between different state police. I mean, a recent example was when the Prime Minister's cavalcade was stopped in Punjab at a particular place, which was very close to the border and where he was very vulnerable. Any drone attack from the border, and they could have taken our prime minister. So nowadays, the federal arrangement is under strain. The relationship between the center and the state is no longer as cordial as it used to be. And even when an IPS officer requests an IPS officer of a different state, if there are different parties ruling in these states, and if the mutual equation between them is not good, then the cooperation is not forthcoming, because the IPS officer at the other end thinks कि if I cooperate, फिर तो हमारा नेताजी हमको हमारी जान खा जाएंगे, हमको निकाल देंगे कि भाई तुमने क्यों, why did you cooperate with that man? So the strain which we are witnessing is not because of the absence of any laws or the absence of any constitutional arrangement. It is becoming because the federal arrangement is under strain, and the states consider themselves almost at war with the center. You see, I mean, that kind of thing between the center. It is there in Delhi. It is center versus center's relations with Punjab, center's relations with West Bengal, center's relations with Tamil Nadu. I mean, they're very strained relations. So you don't get cooperation, and it becomes difficult to protect the BJP candidates in West Bengal. I mean, the central forces had to be deployed last time. So these are, I mean, in fact, things are getting complicated because I would say we are not having a healthy democracy. I mean, the democracy is developing serious aberrations, and that is resulting in the federal structure undergoing a lot of strain.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Next, we have Rahul Yadav ji. Can you please unmute and ask your question?
Good evening, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Sir, although the police reforms in India are long overdue, why do you think there is lack of political will to bring up the police reforms?
Lack of political will in implementing police reforms. You see, nobody would you expect a zamindar to subscribe to zamindari abolition? Zamindar would never agree to zamindari being abolished. He would say, "Bhai, ye to bada acha arrangement hai. I'm able to lord over the police. I'm able to dominate the police. I'm able to give them command. The police are moving to my left and to my right, and everybody gets impressed that yes, I have police men guarding me, protecting me, and they're NSG commandos at time." I mean, it is some kind of intoxication that has gone into the heads of our politicians and bureaucrats ever since independence. And I mean, to carry the comparison further, a man who is used to drinks it's very difficult for him to give up drinks, hard drinks. So this is also some kind of intoxication that has got into their heads. They must realize that in a healthy democracy, police should have functional independence. Let the government prescribe the parameters that these are the policies. This is the framework within which you have to operate. But within that framework, how the police would operate, that should be left to the Director General Police of the state concerned. But they will not only lay down the framework, they will also poke their nose into the investigation of cases, in the arrests of people, in the mention of names. Why did Muzaffar, you would have heard about Muzaffarnagar riots. I mean, why did Muzaffarnagar riots happen at all? They happened because people whose names should have found mention in the FIR, there were instructions from Lucknow that bhaiya inka naam FIR se nikal do. FIR se naam nikal gaya, then the aggrieved party felt that, look, we are not going to get justice. And then the only way to get justice is now take law in your own hands. So that's how the communal conflagration took place. So this is the problem. This is the problem.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Next question we have from Prajakta Pradhanji. Would you like to unmute and ask?
Hello and namaste, sir. My question is that nowadays we see police officers use various repealed sections, such as Section 66A of the IT Act, or use sedition law to book people, more often under political pressure or maybe due to lack of awareness. So what reforms do you believe can be used to address this, considering the fact that training is not a viable option?
No, training is a viable option, only that the culture has to change. And you're absolutely right. These repeal sections are being used by the police. You see, Prajakta, let me tell you, today the police officer thinks he should be looking and concentrating in his profession. But today he believes that my promotion and good posting depends not on my professional excellence, but it depends on my equation with the politician. So his energy and his time and is spent more in cultivating the local politician or being on his right side and looking after his needs and his requirements rather than in developing his own professional skills. And because of that, because of this mindset and because of this attitude, he is not bothered about कौन सा दफा चल रहा है, कौन सा नहीं चल रहा है. भाई ठीक है यार, ऐसे काम तो ऐसे चलता है. तरक्की तो हमारे नेताजी करवा देंगे और हमें यहाँ से even if I do something wrong, I will not be removed because Netaji is there to protect me. So he is not bothered so much about his professional conduct and excellence. He is more concerned about having a political godfather who would protect him at a time when he wants his help. This has led to a sharp decline in the professional, I wouldn't use the word excellence, but professional equipment, professional equipment, mental equipment of the officers and the men. And that is why they use sections which have been deleted, which have been declared unconstitutional, like the sedition and 66 IT, as you said.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Our last question for today's session is from Sonal D'Souza ji. She is unable to unmute, so I'll read out her question. With use of drones, which have been excessively deployed by law enforcement during COVID lockdowns in certain states, but drones and surveillance cameras have been selectively used to monitor and control crime in affluent community areas excessively, leaving the lower income communities unattended, where crime rate may be higher. Usage of drones and surveillance cameras to curb heinous crimes against women.
Now, drones are progressively being used, and yes, there's a report probably where it is said that they are not being used for the advantage of people who are low down in the social ladder. Well, that is a bias which has to be removed, and this is one of the problems. The biases get injected into your work. This is one of the strong arguments against predictive policing. They say predictive policing sounds very good, but if you inject in the algorithm your biases, then the prediction will all be wrong, and it will all be against people who are down below in the social ladder. But drones are getting increasingly used. Unfortunately, they are being used more for unlawful purposes. But gradually, I think their lawful use is increasing, and drones hold a lot of promise in our day-to-day lives, and they hold a lot of promise, and fortunately or unfortunately, in the field of warfare also. And as I was speaking at FICIT this morning, I said a small country today, which has greater technical excellence in drones, can overwhelm a much bigger country. So, I mean, anyway, coming back to your question, drones need to be put to greater use in matters which will ensure better confidence levels from all sections of society, and I entirely agree with you.
Thank you so much, sir. We have one more question from Satyamji. Satyamji, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Good evening, sir. Very long ago, sir, Plato quoted that democracy is the rule of ignorant masses. And now we are seeing that all those politicians are exploiting the emotions of those masses and rising to power. And now what is happening is that police is subservient to those politicians. So the point is, how do you decouple the police force from such politics on where elections are fought on petty issues? And do you think that there is a need for qualified franchisee rather than universal adult franchisee?
Your questions are, I think, very pregnant, and they will require a very long answer, but we are running out of time, so I'll very briefly respond to them. You said democracy is the rule of the ignorant masses. I would not say ignorant, but people have become selfish, self-centered. They want a person to be elected as member of parliament because he belongs to his caste. It does not matter if he's a mafia. It does not matter if he's a criminal. It does not matter if he's a womanizer. But he's my caste, so he should be elected. Now, this is not being ignorant. This is just being selfish, and this is just being self-centered. This is being narrow-minded. This is not imbibing the real spirit of democracy, but trying to contrive an arrangement whereby somebody gets elected who looks after his personal interests, the interests of a caste, country, interests of a region. Now, I'm sorry, but in one, I will not mention, but in one state, you have a chief minister who, I mean, if he were really tried, he should have been sentenced. He should be sentenced to for 100 years in jail. But he's ruling the state. He's ruling the state. And what can you do about it? There are monumental cases of corruption against him. Such people get elected as chief ministers. Such people get elected as members of parliament. Such people get elected as MLAs. It's not ignorant masses. It's just that we are self-centered. We are selfish. We do not think beyond the narrow grooves of caste and region and our self-interest. Unless we think of the country, unless we think of the society as a whole, unless we think of democracy in the true sense of the term, we will continue to be behaving in such a reprehensible manner. That is point number one. Then the next question was, how do we decouple? You see, how do we decouple? The decoupling was suggested by the Supreme Court. They said there should be a state security commission which would oversee the actions of the police department. This state security commission was intended to be some kind of a shock absorber between the government and the police. The state security commission was to ensure that the government does not interfere in the day-to-day functioning of the police, and it was also to ensure that the police does not transgress the limits of law. But the state security commission, but the state security commissions have either not been constituted or their composition has been diluted in a manner where they cannot perform the functions mandated by the Supreme Court, or the powers have been curtailed. As I said, the states have set up these bodies purportedly in compliance of Supreme Court direction, but actually the compliance is farcical. And if you examine things on the ground, they are either they don't show any change, or maybe at places they are even worse than what they were before the Supreme Court gave its orders. So decoupling has to come from the top. Prime Minister Modi gave us a mantra which aroused our hopes. He talked of smart policing, smart for S for sensitive, M for mobile, A for accountable, R for responsive, and T for techno-savvy. We were really, we had great expectations when Prime Minister Modi came with this enunciation in 2014 at Guwahati. But unfortunately, it remained just an acronym, and nothing much was done either by the Home Ministry, and certainly nothing was done by the state governments. Center, of course, always takes the plea that the states are, law and police is a state subject. That's why I say police should be brought to the concurrent list, because the states have done sweet nothing to improve the police or to modernize the police. They look upon this as a force which is, the same kind of attitude which zamindars had you see, the zamindars used to have a body of lathats, people wielding lathi. And what were these lathats supposed to do? Oh, uska galla utha lao, usko char dande laga ke aao, uski ladki utha lao. The zamindars used their lathats for these jobs only, and we have chief ministers today who are using the police like that. That has to end, and that will end. The first step in that direction will be bring it in concurrent list. You know, Mr. Phali Nariman was appointed was requested by us to give to address the Indian Police Foundation, and he said that in India the forests were being denuded. So a delegation went to Mrs. Gandhi and they said, look, madam, India will become a desert if forests remain in the state list. You bring it to the concurrent list. and you exercise some control over forestation and deforestation. Otherwise, India as a country will become a desert country. Mrs. Gandhi listened to it, and since then, forests have been saved. So similarly, Mr. Fali Nariman, mind you, such a constitutional jurist, he said that similarly, police is being devastated by the chief ministers in different states, and this is an area which should be brought to the concurrent list.
Sure, sir. The concurrent list solution seems like a way forward. Thank you, sir.
It is a way forward, and it will not solve the problem, but it will definitely be a way forward, and it will lead to better modernization of the state police forces.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was our honor to have you here with us, sharing your valuable insights and engaging in answering the participants' queries. Thank you so much. We hope we do have the privilege to having you with at IMPRI's Web Policy Talks in the future as well. Before we wrap up today's session, I would like to ask our chair, Professor Mukul Asherji, if he would like to give his closing remarks.
Thank you. Now, both the sessions have underscored how so-called soft reforms are critical. Education, police, judicial, and the prison reforms that came up. But in all this, we as citizens and as public policy stakeholders also have a role to play. And we need to play that role in a constructive way to more popularize the ideas of reforms that our speakers along the lines that our speakers have suggested. And our action should be consistent with these type of reforms, whatever area that we are in. So with that, thank you very much. We have had a very, very rich day today. And I very much appreciate all the speakers and the participants.
Thank you, Professor Mukul, and thank you, the entire staff and all the audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. As we come to the end of day 4 of our 1-month immersive online intermediate certificate training course on contours of the public policy in India in the Amrit Kaal, I, Priyanka Negi, researcher, IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, Center for the Study of Finance and Economics. We are grateful to our experts for day 4 of this course, Professor Shobhit Mathur ji and Mr. Prakash Singh ji, for taking out their valuable time and giving us an opportunity to the participants to learn from this online certification program. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. We look forward to welcoming you tomorrow, that is 16th of September at 6 p.m. for the 5th day of the certification course by distinguished experts Ms. Urvashi Prasad ji, Professor Aman Agarwal ji, and Professor M. Govind Rao ji. We are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join us in the future to improve web policy talk and web policy learning. Wishing you a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.